Hello, welcome to today's training on worldview and its connection to language arts. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. But before we get started, I hope that you are asking yourself, who is this person? Why should I even listen to them? That is a really valuable question. And if you're asking that, it shows that you really care about who it is that's giving input into your life and into your students' life. And that's so important because we need to be careful who we listen to. We need to be careful whose opinion we take seriously. So my name is Teresa. I am a language arts mentor with Discern to Learn. Every term, I take students into my classes, into a Christian worldview classroom where we are unapologetically Christian worldview. We talk about worldview, we talk about persuasive writing, we talk about self-management, self-discipline, and how to prepare ourselves for our futures and to start right now by being able to manage our time, our motivations, our emotions, and to be self-disciplined. Because God gives us opportunities now to prepare us for our future. And if we don't use those opportunities, we're not going to be as prepared as we could be. That we need to do everything in our power to do the best with what we have so that we can be good stewards of His kingdom. I believe that the Bible is God's word, absolutely. And I want to be here to help you and support you on your journey to protect your students' worldview, to teach them to understand, to ask questions, and protect their worldview. So that's where I'm coming from, and I really appreciate it if you are asking that question. So first of all, we have a bias alert. We all have a bias, and we are so quick to point out someone else's bias. But have we considered what our own bias is? Every single person has a bias. We are biased by our upbringings, how we were raised, how discipline happened in our home, the way we were spoken to. Are some emotions bad? How do we learn discipline? How do we learn what respect looks like? Because those things are actually different in many homes. And probably when you got married and you started to have children, you started to discover that your spouse had a different upbringing than you, very likely, or in at least some ways. And all of a sudden, you have these competing ideas for what home should look like. So we all have a bias. We're also biased by our experiences, things that have happened around us or to us, because they change the way we think, believe, and respond. Underneath all of that, we have deep-seated, underlying, and perhaps secret beliefs. Often we don't even know they're there until something bad happens in our life and we respond with shock, anger, and a feeling of injustice. That seems to mean that even though we know the world is a difficult place, and even if we know that bad things happen to good people, deep down, we really truly believe that we deserve more. We deserve better. Really deep down, we often believe that if we do good things are going to happen to us. And in this world, we will discover that that's not always the case. And sometimes the difficulties in life bring this up, this disconnect between what our mind tells us we believe and what our heart tells us we believe. So it's so important to actively engage, especially with these deep beliefs, because these will confront us. Our students need to answer these questions and consider answers to these questions before those bad things happen, and they will. They need to have an answer to tell themselves, to preach to themselves that just because something bad happens doesn't mean that I'm not doing right, or it doesn't mean that I'm not on God's path, and it doesn't mean that God doesn't care. What we believe changes the way we see the world. The way we see the world changes what we believe. So it's so important to monitor and to know what's coming into our lives and into our students' lives. So I often ask students, what are your inputs? What things are coming into your life? What are you feeding yourself with? If all of the things coming into our lives are negative, or have a worldview that we don't support, then we're going to very quickly adapt to that because it feels as though everybody believes that. There have been social experiments where they take a classroom, and in university very often, and they will ask a question that seems entirely obvious. So everyone in the class feels that they know the answer, but one person immediately answers an answer and is so sure of themselves. And then other people start to agree with them. And pretty soon, pretty much everyone in the class believes the same thing, even though they all know it doesn't really make sense. Or maybe they feel that since the other people are so confident that they must be wrong. They must not understand the question wrong. We have a bias where we respect and put emphasis and extra reliance on people who are super confident of what they believe and what they think. And we want our young people to be those people. We don't want them to be looking to see what everyone else is confident about. We want them to be those people. So how can we do that? I ask them, what movies are you watching? What books are you reading? What music are you listening to? How much of that is telling you what is good and true? Now, what about that verse? Whatever things are good, true, pure, lovely, think on these things. Do we then only let our students see and hear what is good and true? Do we sequester them from the world? All the birds on the screen right now, they're all talking about pretty much the same things. And they may have some different ideas, but they're all talking. And the thing is, they're all saying kind of the same things. And what happens when we live in a world where we don't hear other people's beliefs and ideas, and every single person we talk to believes the same as us? We become super confident in what we believe. We feel strengthened. But what is happening is we're in an echo chamber. And in an echo chamber, we only hear back the kinds of things that we would say. It makes us think that everybody must think that. And if someone doesn't agree with me, then they must not be very intelligent. They must not be very logical. Or they could even potentially not be quite as good as me. We come to a point where we aren't able to actually treat those other people with respect. We've become separated. There's them and us. They are the other. We're the normal. We're the ones who are logical and good and pure and holy, and all of those other people, well, they're not. But we're not called to an echo chamber. Did the disciples hole up in the upper room? Of course not. We're called to be in this world, but to have our hearts be separated. Echo chambers are a disservice to teenagers because they do not learn to answer hard questions, and the time will come when their faith will be shaken. They need answers to those questions. They need to explore that. They need a space, a safe space where they can ask those hard questions and say, yeah, that's kind of true. Well, I don't know how to answer that. We don't want to wait until they're adults and out on their own and have them be thrown into a world that asks them hard questions that they don't have answers to. They need to be in an environment where they have guidance to learn how to think, how to talk to others, how to talk with others about their beliefs and ideas, and then have someone where they can ask questions. It's very, very important to expose our young people in order to challenge their beliefs. When we only hear the things we agree with, we actually increase the risk of a loss of compassion and an increase in violence. When we start to see people as other, all of a sudden we don't care about them as much. We're called to go to make disciples, and we can't do that in the upper room. So it's super important that we expose our young people and that their beliefs are challenged. In my language arts program, we do this very little in junior high, but especially in high school. So in junior high, the young people, some of them are beginning to be able to question and think logically, but mostly I teach them to think logically, to ask questions like, what is this author saying? Who are they? What are they trying to make me believe? Those kinds of ways. But in high school, we start talking about some of those harder questions. There are no grandchildren in God's kingdom. It is scary, but we need our kids to question. We need them to look for their own answers, to work out their own salvation. What I know in my questioning and in my children's questioning is that God can handle it. God can handle it. He is still in control. He is still God, and we can trust him. So where do we start with this? First of all, the very first thing that we do in junior high is we start asking, who's the author? What's the author's life experience? What's their beliefs? What faith do they have? What messages do we see in this book? And we want to pick out those messages and look at them. Instead of just reading the book and identifying with the character and understanding why they would respond and react in the way that they do, we want to call out those beliefs and look at them, see which pieces are lies, keep what's good, throw out what's bad. We're here to raise adults, not children. They must be able to hear arguments and pull out false parts and know why they're false. If your young person isn't reading the Bible, like the actual Bible, and they're in middle school, this is a really big problem. Daily devotion books with one verse or two verses pulled randomly out of the Bible with a nice story sound so easy, but it's out of context, and they need to read and see what the Bible really says. We also need exposure to challenging beliefs because it helps us fortify our worldview, and it gives us the ability to discuss and stand firm. And this is more what we do in high school. So when we expose our young people with guidance and support, we allow them to question. We allow them to think, the person who is asking this question is made in God's image exactly the same as me. They are logical. They have their reasons for believing what they believe. I wonder what those reasons are. What life experiences have they had that have brought them to this point? We can have compassion and empathy for them. And we can still answer with that same compassion and empathy and truth. We want to teach our young people to be logical and powerful speakers, writers, and thinkers. It's so, so important because as you see on the screen, that photo on the left with the tall, spindly peas, when you grow them inside with, nice conditions and no wind and no storm, they grow tall and quick and they look so green and healthy. But when you compare them to peas that grow outside that have thick stems, and now these peas are a little bit older than the others. I couldn't find a picture about the same period, but they have thicker stems, but they take longer to grow. And that's okay, because when they're outside, they're not as protected. They get the storms, they get the wind, and that's what makes them strong. And we want strong and powerful young people. We don't want weak peas that are going to topple over with the first wind or with the first storm, or even just being out in the sun. So it's so, so important that although we want to be there to support, to understand and to care and to guide, that we're not sheltering them, we're not keeping them from challenging beliefs. Because strong beliefs make powerful people. We want young people that can stand for their beliefs in a godless world, that can be ready in season and out of season with a word to answer in a logical and persuasive way so that the person they're speaking to can actually understand. The strongest plants have grown not in hothouses, but outside with storms, full of sun and wind. Language arts without worldview discussions are a danger to our children. We ask them to read all sorts of classical literature, and classical literature has changed the world. It has changed the beliefs of the world. It has changed the acceptabilities of the world and the sensibilities of the world. And we need them to have critical reading and thinking skills. We need to have conversations and speeches and papers that are going to help our young people to be persuasive and logical, to be able to ask out their reader and their friend difficult questions in return. So, parents, continue to work with your young person regarding worldview. Dig in, answer some of those hard questions people are asking. You know these questions. If God's good, why do so many bad things happen? The Bible's not really true. It can't possibly really be true. That many people couldn't have written it. There's so many excellent answers to this question and many others. So you know these questions, you've heard them. If you haven't, then you really need to just do a little bit of Googling. You're going to find them out there. If you are looking for a program to help your students to read critically, to think logically, and to learn to write and speak persuasively so that they can fortify their worldview, please contact me today. I want to offer you this free e-guide right now, 5 Steps to Language Arts with a Purpose. And this is a book that explains how I do this. It is part of my no grading, no nagging language arts program that includes self-motivation, self-discipline, time management, and growth mindset that's going to help your student be able to develop the skills they need to be confident and successful in every area of their life, not just in this course. Thank you so much for joining me today, for caring so much for your young person, that you are out looking and trying to discover a path to help them. And I so appreciate how much effort you put into that. You don't hear often enough, but I want to thank you for caring and for being there for your young person. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to hear from you. I'll talk to you very soon.